It's another crazy day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast is having significant problems with Tarkir Dragonstorm. We've got a Final Fantasy spoiler, an absolutely amazing Deadpool secret layer to look at. And that's not even all the news that we're going to cover today.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for a jam-packed installment of Mega Magic News. We got good news, we got bad news, we got silliness. So, diving in right from the top, let's get the bad news out of the way. We're going to talk about what's going down with Tarkir Dragonstorm and the problems that Wizards of the Coast is having with it. And these are distribution level issues which affect multiple locations in the world. So, starting out with the fact that Malaysia and Indonesia are having their actual pre-release events delayed by a week. So instead of getting to enjoy the pre-release like the rest of us, which is actually happening in a few days, 2 days from now, and I am hyped because Tarkir feels like a genuine Magic the Gathering set. Aether Drift was decidedly not for me, but dragons soaring through the sky, warriors on their back, bringing battle, I'm here for it. So I'm genuinely hyped about the pre-release that's coming up, which makes me feel even more for these individuals who are left out in the cold for a week. At least it's only a week. Sometimes we've had situations where people have had to wait months to be able to get their product, which is obviously an abysmal scenario to find yourselves in. And we have a situation where there's not as much product flowing around as would be desired in locations. I've seen reports of people in Europe saying that orders are being canceled, pre-orders are being thrown out the door because unfortunately there's not enough product to go around. So it looks like we're going to have some issues with Tarkir here and there. It's not 100% all the different locations that are impacted, but I've seen different people chiming in saying that they're getting hosed as well. I believe most likely this boils down to the fact that Wizards of the Coast has a lot of a lot of irons in the fire, I should say, right? This is the year where we have way more stuff going on in terms of all these Universe Beyond sets coming into standard. You have Wizards doing a ton of different secret layers on top of the whole Chaos Vault stuff. So ultimately, I'm wondering if Wizards of the Coast has finally bumped up against that wall they can't push past. And by that, I mean, have they started to create so many products that production literally can't keep up? Because there is an upper limit to that, right? You can't print infinite Magic cards. You have different print facilities, different card games competing for those print facilities, because obviously these other card games need to be producing their own stuff as well. So even though Wizards uses partners in places like Belgium, Japan, and America, I'm guessing that we finally crossed that threshold where they just straight can't keep up. So anybody who's affected by this, my heart goes out to you. This is the one set we're going to get this year that feels like full-on traditional Magic the Gathering, and I want everybody to be able to enjoy it as much as I am. And speaking of enjoyment, if you have not heard yet about Destroy All Humans, They Can't Be Regenerated. Well, in Japan, they just released the final installment of this book, but over here in North America, it's just starting to come out. There's only 3 installments out as far as I know. And I love this so much. I was up into the wee hours last night reading this. I already sat down to just take a peek into the book and I couldn't stop. I went halfway through it and I literally stopped myself because I wanted to save the rest for later. If you are an old school Magic player and you remember the early days, they're getting excited about sets like Tempest, Exodus, earlier things like that. Oh, the stuff that you get to see in here is so nostalgic. If you are a dinosaur like me and you loved the 90s, oh getting a treat. And each of these comes with a special magic card in the back as well. So I genuinely cannot recommend this enough. I love it. So that out of the way, next thing we're going to talk about is the Final Fantasy spoiler. So up on the screen, you're going to see Gladiolus Amacitia. Now that is an unwieldy name, and it honestly just makes me think of a flower. I'm like, this is Flower Man, and that's what I'm going to call him because his name is crazy to me. So this dude is from Final Fantasy 15, all right? I'm not really familiar with that game, so ultimately this guy is somebody who is charged with protecting royalty. You'll see that with the flavor text, and if you take a quick peek at the wiki online, you'll also see the same thing. So 1 green, 1 red, and 4 for a 6/6 legendary human warrior. When he enters, search your library for a land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. He's got landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, another target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. So, the flavor behind him, like I said, he's a royal guard. Flavor text says, guard the king with our lives. That's the way it's always been. So, very straightforward in that concept. I presume that's what the landfall ability is supposed to be about. Whenever you play a land, you're giving a boost to a creature. That's going to be you pumping up the monarch that he serves. So, I mean, let's be real. This is a pretty middle of the road uncommon. You can obviously use it as a commander if this is a character you're super excited about. I do like the artwork where he's standing there. I love the big fat honk boy swords from Final Fantasy, and I love how easily they're hefted about, like, boom, I'm just gonna casually have this slung over my shoulder like it's a walking stick when it's a sword as big as I am. That is a lot of fun. And I enjoy the vista behind him. But ultimately, this is a card not really going to knock your socks off, right? This is something that will be solid if you're playing in a limited format, a draft or something like that. Ultimately, the fact that he can't target himself is a little bit disappointing. I understand that it works from a flavor standpoint and says, yeah, he gives a bonus to the king or whatever, but as a 6/6 beef boy, it would be nice if you could just slap down a land, give him +2/+2 and trample, and now you're coming in with an 8/8 trampler, because on his own, his landfall's not going to do anything for you, but at least he does grab you a land. But again, with his huge casting cost, getting out a land and moving up to having 7 mana, he doesn't feel that impactful all by himself. He's just a thick body, right? Now, I want to talk about the Deadpool secret lair, because this thing is super exciting. So, with no further ado, let's take a look. We're starting off this absolutely ridiculous secret lair with the man himself. Deadpool trading card. 1 red, 1 black, and 2 for a 5/3 legendary mutant mercenary hero. When he enters, you may exchange his text box and another creature's. And you're really going to want to do that because the rest of his abilities are genuinely awful. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 3 life. 3 cost, sack this creature, each other player draws a card. So the idea behind this is super simple. Slap them onto the board and either pick a card that has an amazing ability you want to swipe, or pick one of your opponent's gigantic beat sticks and shove these negative abilities onto it. So now your opponent's stuck with the choice of, do I want to sack this, lose a permanent, and all my opponents draw a card, or do I just want to lose 3 life every time the board swings around to my upkeep? So that is not a fun position to be in. And meanwhile, you've totally stolen their abilities and are running around having a fantastic time with it. So that is a powerful set of abilities, made even stronger by the fact that, hey, this guy's your commander in most cases, right? So you're going to be able to slap it out and do it over and over and over. I mean, at a certain point, the commander tax is going to stop you from being able to do it too many times, but ultimately, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of this ability. And from a flavor standpoint, also a lot of fun. I really like Deadpool. I enjoy the 4th wall breaking, where he is aware that he's in movies. He's aware that he's in comic books. And in this case, he's aware that he's in a card game. So you can see it straight in the name. Hey, I'm just a trading card. You can see him literally cutting into the actual text box, which works great from the standpoint of he's cutting off his abilities, slapping them onto another creature, yanking theirs off, and slapping it onto his card. The flavor text says, draw me like one of your French cards, which is a reference to draw me like one of your French girls from Titanic. And you can see the artwork shows him trying to look all endearing. Oh, look at me with my little kind of almost winking at you face. Ultimately, this really does evoke the flavor of Deadpool, and they've done a great job. Now, this is the only functionally unique card that we're going to get in the Secret Lair. Everything else is going to be reprints, but these reprints have been done in the Deadpool style, and they are very enjoyable. So let's go through them. First, we've got Vandal Blast. So, 1 red for a sorcery, destroy target artifact you don't control, and it has Overload for a red and 4. Now, this originally showed up in one of the Ravnica blocks back in the day, and people were like, all right, this is okay. But over time, especially with the prevalence of Commander, this has moved up the ranks in desirability, because ultimately, when you overload it, you smash every artifact that you don't own on the board, and when you have 3 opponents, you're going to get a lot of value out of it. Every Commander deck on Earth pretty much runs artifacts, right? Even if it's just something as Sol Ring, some signets, you're usually going to get maybe a 3-for-1, 4-for-1, 6-for-1. It really scales up depending on what your opponents are packing. So it's a very solid card, and it has a bunch of fun flavor to it. You've got Deadpool here with a flamethrower. He's bent over, doing it between his legs with the almost, look, I'm not looking style vibe. He's basically burning up a Black Lotus, right? So that's an alpha, actually. If you take a look at the borders on it, that is an alpha Black Lotus, not a beta Black Lotus, because alpha cards have a little bit more of a rounded border. And if you didn't know this, back in the earliest days of Magic, you couldn't actually use alpha cards in your deck because of those extra rounded corners. So there was a time where beta cards were more desirable than alpha. But obviously, now in the day of sleeves, it doesn't matter. But the idea that he's literally torching the most valuable card in Magic is absolutely hilarious. The flavor text says, look at me, I'm Chandra Nalar. And I laughed pretty hard when I saw that the first time. It's just the whole tongue-in-cheek ridiculousness of it. The whole, oh, look at me, I'm a fiery planeswalker, I'm burning a Black Lotus. That's a lot of fun. Now, some Marvel fans are going to have to clue me in on this one, because I don't recognize who's in the background right now freaking out as that Black Lotus is getting burnt, and I don't know what that portal is. Certain cards I get more of the reference on, but ultimately, I haven't read a lot of the comic books, so I don't know everything about Deadpool, but this is a lot of fun. Moving on, we've got Blasphemous Act. So, 1 red and 8 for a sorcery that says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. It deals 13 damage to each creature. Now, this is a card that's absolutely bonkers in Commander. I have recently experienced this being slammed down, because ultimately, until pretty recently, I haven't played a lot of Commander, but yeah, I've seen this thing in action. When you just play one-on-one games, it can be kind of hard to cast depending on how many creatures on the board, but in Commander, there's tons of creatures on the board, and this becomes exceedingly easy to cast. So, it's a good include from that regard. It's essentially gonna, in most cases, it's gonna be a straight up board wipe that takes all the creatures off the board, because 13 toughness even, anything below that is gone. You have to have a creature that either can survive red damage with protection from red, or have some gigantic beefcake that has a billion +1/+1 counters on it who can go, yep, I'm still around, bro, no problem. So, the artwork shows the Earth being destroyed. Deadpool he's sitting on the moon eating a chimichanga. You can see the not the Mars rover, the moon landing, what's it called? I don't even know what they call this specifically. The moon rover? Either way, you can see the old gear that's left there from the astronauts landing on the moon decades ago, which is fun. He's literally got the Infinity Gauntlet, and he's snapping it to smoke the Earth. And the flavor text says, you might be wondering why I've killed the Marvel Universe yet again. But the real question is, How am I breathing on the moon? I love these ridiculous fourth wall breaks. Like on the previous card where he knows Chandril and Lair is a planeswalker. And it's like, look at me, I'm pretending to be a planeswalker. And here he is going, yeah, look, I know I'm destroying everything. But really, how am I breathing on the moon? How is that possible? So ultimately, a lot of fun. I really dig the overall vibe of this. Then we've got Saw in Half. 1 black and 2 instant. Destroy target creature. If that creature dies this way, its controller creates 2 tokens that are copies of that creature, except their power is half that creature's power, and their toughness is half that creature's toughness. Round up each time. So, this is a card that was originally designed as an uncard back in Unfinity. Wizards of the Coast decided, you know what? This would actually work with normal rules anyways, so why don't we switch it from being an uncard into a real card, and it's exploded in popularity. Really being able to take one of your creatures with the best abilities and go, boom, I've actually got 2 of them, then all of a sudden you're laughing even harder, right? Sure, their power and toughness is halved, but you can have 2 copies of the same ability. And in Commander, when you can only play 1 copy of a card, this is a very effective way to get around that. And on top of it, it's also a way to just deal with one of your opponent's creatures if for some reason having 2 smaller versions is going to suit your purposes. So this has a lot of versatility to it. I like the little reminder. Don't try this at home, kids. Magic is super dangerous. And you can see Deadpool getting cut in half with a gigantic saw that's literally cutting through the text box as well. He's got a magician's cape and his little top hat going, ta-da, look at the trick I'm doing. Because ultimately, he has massive regeneration. That's part of what makes him such a fun character. They can ragdoll him as hard as they want, and he will just live through it all, right? So ultimately, it's a genuinely fun character to play around with in that regard, and it really, really works quite well for the flavor of a card like this. And people just genuinely want to have this card, so it's an all-around win. Then we've got Deadly Rollick, a black and 3 for an instant that says, if you control a commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost. Exile target creature. More and more Wizards has been leaning into these exile effects because they keep making creatures that are either indestructible or they have awesome abilities when they go to the graveyard. So they just outright go, yo, let's exile it. And this was from the series of, what was it originally? The Ikoria Commander decks, I believe. So ultimately, very decent creature removal. If you're playing a commander deck, obviously it becomes a lot more powerful because you can cast it out of nowhere for free at instant speed. So you got Deadpool riding around on a unicorn. You've got rainbows. You've got butterfly action, which is hilarious for a card that's about ending somebody, right? And you've got him riding up on, this is Cable, is it not? That's who it is, I believe, unless there's another dude who looks surprisingly similar to him and has the crazy glowing eye as well. The flavor text says, I normally charge for my Merc services, but I just can't say no to someone who controls their commander. It's so goofy, but it's also so delightful because it's bang on for Deadpool. I don't know any other character that you could put on a card like this with this sort of flavor text and have it work. Magic's only really ever had one character who could break the whole like fourth wall concept, and that was Commodore Guff, right? So he specifically knew things about everything. He had a secret library, a whole history to it. He's a very interesting character, but he's also in the Magic universe. But ultimately, this is literally the only person you could use to pull this off. So when it comes to this secret layer, just so you guys know, as of the time of recording this video, you are still able to find these on the Secret Lair website for sale. They are in low stock though. And as an added bonus, if you didn't know, Wizards of the Coast is actually providing copies of this Secret Lair to game stores. So LGSs will be getting a limited amount of these, probably in the range of something like 20 or less. Now, it may vary depending on how big the store is, whether it's a premier store, the relationship they have with their distributor, all that sort of thing. But these will be showing up in non-foil versions specifically at LGSs. So if you missed out on the sale online from the Secret Lair website, you will still have a chance to actually grab this. But that wraps up talking about the Secret Lair. On to the next part of the news. I absolutely adore that Deadpool secret lair and totally want to get one myself. I'm glad they're going to be available at local game stores. It's nice to see Wizards of the Coast not leaving them out in the cold, and also not just trying to dump unsold secret lairs on them like they did with the one Hasbro Pulse secret lair with the Chibi Walkers, where they just had a bunch extra and went, we're going to be good guys and send them out to the stores. But you went, these are trash to you. You couldn't sell them, and you're just handing them off to the stores. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is Wonders of the First. You know, I've talked about it before. So I opened a box of it last night over on my live stream channel. You can check that out if you want to see it. There is a reminder for you right now that tomorrow, April 3rd, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are going to be doing a live stream with Brian Tinsman, who used to work on Magic the Gathering. He's responsible for Time Spiral. He created the Annihilator mechanic, Storm. He has done a ton in Magic the Gathering. I'm going to have him live here. We're going to be interviewing him, talking about his new game, and for a very brief window of time, we're going to have a super limited amount of Wonders of the First that you can pick up yourself in the fine luxury cardboard rectangle bundle that they've put together specifically for this channel. So I will see you guys for that tomorrow. And it's time for me to go. I'll be live tonight over on my live stream channel. Thanks for coming by and hearing what I have to say. Big shout out to my patrons. You guys rule. And I will see you all in the next video and tomorrow's live stream.